YouTube, it's Lee right again. Sorry I've been gone so long, just been a little bit sick, first time in like 2 years, and I couldn't talk for a spell. But here we are back at the studio, back on the beach in North Carolina. It's real pretty out today, about to thunderstorm, but we got a few minutes here. I've been out here looking for shark's teeth, and I got a new shovel. And so what they say when you're looking for shark's teeth on the beach is that if you see a mound of sand, you should dig that mound. So I found a mound of sand, and I've been digging, and no shark's teeth. So I don't know what's going on there. If you just keep that in mind. If you guys ever go looking for shark's teeth on the beach, this advice to dig may not be the best. So because it didn't work for me. Anyway, while we're waiting on my book to publish, I still don't have an official release date yet. Just the way the publisher works. This one in particular, I won't know until like a couple of weeks before it's actually out. So we are at least a couple of weeks out right now. Cover design's all approved. It's looking real good. Super excited. But again, while we're waiting, I thought I'd do something kind of new for the channel. But everything on my channel is story based, so I feel like it's okay to do a little bit of a movie review about a story I really care about. And so recently, I can't remember if it was first part of last year or last part of the year before that, was The Greatest Showman, with Hugh Jackman and Zac Efron and Zendaya and Michelle Williams and all them. Just a real great film, musical number. I was really inspired by the story. I'm noticing a lot of it is winding up in my new manuscripts. But one thing, I realized a lot of people didn't care for it as much as I did. They were saying it was historically inaccurate, that their depiction of the times is a little bit crossed up. A lot of the styles aren't actually matching with the style of the time. The events are out of line. The events are, aggrandized. And of course, it's Hollywood. They're going to do that. And I actually agree with the critics 100% on that. The Greatest Showman was not accurate. Only a few of the characters were made up. In fact, I know for a fact that Zac Efron's character was made up. He's kind of an analog for Mr. Bailey, but he's actually swapped in that historical role where actually P.T. Barnum would have been Zac Efron's role way back when. So Zac Efron is pretty much entirely made up, which by extension means that Zendaya's character was pretty much entirely made up. The events are all out of order. There were actually several fires. He tried several times, excuse me, to keep his circus in a building, and it kept burning down rather than just one time. And and he never lost his mansion. So all these things just out of order, kind of aggrandized. But I think that's actually the essence of the story. Because there's one scene, and I can't remember the critic's name, but the critic meets P.T. Barnum after one of their, biggest shows, right after the Come Alive sequence, which is a great one. And he says, "Tell me, Mr. Barnum, does it bother you that everything you're selling is fake?" And then Barnum stops and he says, "Well, look at these smiles. Do they seem fake? It doesn't matter where they come from if the joy is real." And then the critic says, "Spoken like a true, the words of a true fraud." No. All right, I'm getting it mixed up. The words of a true fraud. Anyway, it boils down to P.T. Barnum asks him, when was the last time you laughed at a theater, had a real laugh? And the critic doesn't respond. He doesn't have anything to say to that. And P.T. Barnum stops and says, "Theater critic who can't find joy in a theater. Now who's a fraud?" So those two lines are pretty much the summary of the entire story and what P.T. Barnum, with his circus and everything, was going for when he did it. Now, I don't know how many people like P.T. Barnum. There's a lot of things going on about him, with PETA, and because it was before the Civil War, there's worries about slavery. I'm not going to get into that. I personally think that needs to be looked in closer than most people look at it. Yeah, we'll just say that not everything is facts just because it's repeated often. So, but P.T. Barnum, the movie ends in a quote, and he says the greatest, I can't remember even the name of the quote that it ends with. You should watch the movie. Check the quote at the end of the movie. But everything about P.T. Barnum growing up was about aggrandizement, and it came from a history with his family. When he was born, his uncle bequeathed to him, I think it's either Briar Island or something like that, and It was believed to be this grand estate that P.T. Barnum's uncle had actually like granted to him at his birth. And the stipulation was that P.T. had to be like 6 or 7 years old before he could actually look at this grand estate that he'd been given. And when he got there, 6 and 7 years old, it was a little tiny strip of marshland along a river, completely useless. And it was a practical joke, a 6-year-long practical joke on a child from an adult. Could be looked at as really cruel. But P.T. Barnum took it and he said, well, all those 6 years, I thought I was lord of the estate. And even as a 6-year-old, he had great confidence, and in that also it gave him great flamboyance because he felt he had weight behind his name, P.T. Barnum, owner of this grand estate on the river. And then he learned to use that and to aggrandize things to put value in people's minds rather than value in the things themselves. And so like there's a story with an auction where he auctioned off glass jars, empty glass jars, and he got tons of people to come into this grocery store he was working at and buy into this auction and win these glass jars. And it was wonderful. Everybody won something, even if it was like 3 glass jars that were empty. But to these people, they took part in an auction, and it raised the money it was meant to, and the people felt like they got something from it, even though it was nothing. And so a lot of in this day and age, everything is something. Like we make these posts and these likes on YouTube and on Facebook, and we're trying to say that nothing is something. All our comments, all our news, outrage, people feeling like they have rights to things that aren't listed in the Constitution, us feeling like we have the right to be upset when life does us a hard turn, when we really just got to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. And it's not a hard thing to do. You focus on things that you believe in, and you use those to aggrandize the things around you. And so what P.T. Barnum had in his circus was a bunch of people who had been beaten down by life. It was unfair to them. People with deformities, or, with the African Americans being just put down because of the color of their skin. Life had done them a bad turn. And but P.T. Barnum gave these people an opportunity, said, no, in Come Alive, he says, or right before Come Alive, he says, they don't know yet, but they will. And all it took was the bearded lady to sing, and people saw her beauty, her value, that they couldn't see at first. It wasn't visible. It was an invisible value that people ascribed this great value to, and it brought these people in. And it was a beautiful thing. And our lives can be beautiful if we just aggrandize the things we believe in and don't put ourselves down based on the opinions of others. So, the critics were entirely right about The Greatest Showman. It wasn't historically accurate. Neither was the Fiji Mermaid. Neither was the Green Giant, the Irish Giant, nor the Asian Giant. You'll notice there's something. Actually, the first giant in Barnum's circus was not the Irish Giant. It was the Asian Giant. Also, something they don't mention, that the midget was actually one of P.T. Barnum's distant cousins. But anyway, none of it was real. But because we ascribed something to it, it became real. And it became valuable. And so now we have to be careful of what we ascribe value to, because we can't ascribe value to anything. We can ascribe value to our likes and our comments. And then we can forget to ascribe value to just the normal people around us. And so I encourage everybody to find glory in the mundane, and look into the people who are just normal in your lives, who just happen to be propping you up all the time. And also to realize that you are that glorious mundane, or even that glorious rejection, and that you do have the power to change the world just by believing. So, circling back one more time, the critics were absolutely right, but they were wrong too, because what they saw as a flaw in the story was actually the story itself. So, Don't know how well that touched down, but that's just the way I've been feeling about the movie. I really feel like it's something that was missed. You know, the other messaging of the movie are just about racial equality. That's there. You know, it's about, you know, the disabled, you know, equality for even the disabled. I can't remember the term for that. But and it's about, you know, love against all odds and all this stuff. But the key message of the story was missed by a whole lot of people. And so, and I felt like that's just such a shame. So when its greatest weapon is turned into an Achilles heel as far as a storytelling standpoint. So because I was sick, I missed a song for the new year, and I just felt like, you know, it's traditional. You got to sing Auld Lang Syne for the new year, and I couldn't do it because I was unwell. And also, actually, Contest with the Night, my book that's being published, that's coming out in a couple of weeks. It actually features Auld Lang Syne in one part in the story. So without further ado, here's Auld Lang Syne as we watch the waves come in. Should old acquaintance be forgot, and days of Auld Lang Syne, should old acquaintance be forgot, and never brought to mind, for Auld Lang Syne, my dear, for Auld Lang Syne will take a cup of kindness yet, for Auld Lang Syne. And surely you'll buy your pine stove, and surely I'll buy mine, and we'll take a cup of kindness yet, for Auld Lang Syne, for Auld Lang Syne, my dear, for Auld Lang Syne. We'll take a cup of kindness yet, for Auld Lang Syne. We two have run about the braes and put the gowans fine, and we'll take a cup of kindness yet, for Auld Lang Syne, for Auld Lang Syne, my dear, for Auld Lang Syne. We'll take a cup of kindness yet, for Auld Lang Syne. Then in a nobler, sweeter song, I'll sing thy power to save, when this poor lisping, stammering tongue lies silent in the grave. I'll sing thy power to save, I'll sing thy power to save, when this poor lisping, stammering tongue lies silent in the grave. So I just changed the last verse a little bit as maybe a little bit of a spoiler or a teaser for Contest with the Night. Starting to rain real heavy here. As you notice, I was trying to fill in my pit before I left it, but I better end the video. So thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you soon. Watch out for Contest of the Night coming out, and God bless you. Bye bye.